I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, one of the big names in this tournament. He's got one of the highest skill levels. So, I mean, I'm actually, every portion of the bracket does have some nice little stories going on.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yesterday or something, or recently in Code A, he's actually been eliminated. But
yeah.
I mean, Code A now is at a point where there's so many good players there.
It's ridiculous.
If you got given that list of players and you hadn't seen Code S, but you didn't know that it was Code A, you could quite easily assume that a lot of Code A was Code S.
That's very true. That's well said right there, yeah. That's, you'd look at it like, oh, MVP and ST and...
It's crazy.
It's like insane. MC's in there. Yeah, that you could do that.
Those lucky Kaldor and Wolfman, they get some good games.
They're lucky guys.
Okay, guys, let's jump on into our first series of the day. Big thank you for joining us here for the Intel Extreme Masters Singapore. Spawning up to the top left, we have our Red Terran, and he goes by the name of Carontes Lucifron. And spawning down up to the bottom right-hand corner here as our Blue Terran, we have ourselves the recent addition of Western Wolves. He goes by the name of Sting. And once again, big hello and good morning to our lovely observer with his lovely smiley faces, Mr. Infeza. Oh, look at that. It's so cute. I love it.
He's so good at that.
I love it.
He's so good at making smileys with his mouse. He is. All right, so TVT Action, Calaris. It's fun to see one of these actually in the bracket because everyone's like, oh, there's no Terrans in your tournament. TVT, how you like that? Is that enough Terran for you? Yeah, I thought so.
It's great because, like there was a time where people were like, oh no, TVT, and now people are like, whoa, we're TVT. Holy.
It's so funny because this is a trend that's happening in a lot of places right now, but not Korea. Like the GSL, we've had a lot of TVTs recently. We have 2 Terrans in our top 4 right now.
Yeah.
So, and this has happened to Terrans several times, and I think the reason is, hold on, listen to this. It's not balance based. It's more based off of how ridiculously good mechanically you must be with Terran to play it. Like, yeah, you can cheese every game and do reasonably well, but to play like a sound macro game as Terran, like a long game, damn, do you have to be fast and on top of everything. And the Koreans just put in more prax hours than not everyone, but most of the world, basically.
Yeah, and it's so versatile as well as a race. Every single unit has its place, and if you, as a player, can put in the hours, if you can really just hone down and hunker in on every little aspect of it, Terran becomes ridiculously versatile. And I also want to come back to the point you made about the round of 4 whilst we're just getting this going, and a little bit of SCV harassment occurs, but it shouldn't be able to kill it. The round of 4 of Code S has actually turned out in the most weird of ways.
It kind of has.
It's such an odd round of 4. I mean, all of the players, they're sick good.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily the names that you would have expected to be.
Yeah, really only, I would say Leenock. You look at him, you're like, oh, Leenock, top 4. Okay, yeah, obviously. But, like, Innovation, who thought that aside from Major?
Apart from Major, yeah.
Yeah, well...
Well, I mean, Major.
I'm not going to bring up how he thought Light Alive was the best Terran in the world for 10 years, but...
That's true.
Anyways.
Okay, we still have Lucifron here trying to clean up exactly what's going on at the front here. Sting getting pretty darn aggressive. He tries to kill off one of the SCVs. Will actually get a kill. Nice poke there. And, if you're trading 50 minerals for 50 minerals plus the opportunity cost of a mining, this SCV is still being annoying.
He slowed down the command center a bit. Now he's got another Marine in here. Did lose his own SCV, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I would say that overall, that was fine for Sting. That was good for Sting. It was just this little tiny thing which might not actually end up making any difference in the game, but a lot of little things. You know what they say, 1,000 bee stings kills an elephant.
Yeah.
That's what they say, Calaris.
That's what they say.
Yeah, that's an old proverb.
Yeah, Chinese one? Yep.
Maybe.
Maybe.
An old Artosian proverb.
Okay. I like that race. Okay, so we have, for now, Factory on the way here for Sting. So he does grab himself up that little bit of a tech advantage. I wonder if he's actually going to go into Hellion production with this. I mean, Sting, again, he's one of those guys that is really, really exploitative, is really liking to ramp up that pressure. Getting on his starport for now, but again, there's no real reason why he could not quite easily go for, the Hellions and the Banshees here. Yeah,
he definitely could go for something like that. And his barracks is placed in such a way that he can easily make an add-on if he wants to. I like openings like that with the reactored Hellions. I feel like it gives you some nice map control early on, and it always puts that fear that, oh my god, are there going to be Hellions in my base? Which is going to make Lucifron you know, a little bit more defensive at least.
Yeah, and there's always that threat as well. I mean, you know your opponent's got a factory, he's got some Hellions, and then with the starport, yes, normally they're going to Banshees, but there's the potential that somebody can crank out like one medevac, for example, and start getting really, really annoying with those drop potentials. And in fact, hello.
Hi.
Medevac on the way.
That is true. So we are going to see a little bit of a push coming up here. And in fact, Sting already has 6 Marines with more on the way. So he's going to have 7 or 8 Marines when this medevac pops out. So he can do all sorts of things. He can pressure in the main with a Marine drop or a Hellion drop, run in the natural, that type of thing. So we'll see what he ends up deciding to do. But Lucifron, his combat shields are going to be almost done, and he has a pretty solid amount of Marines right now.
He's taking good precautions. He's already getting that wallop off at his natural, which is so important, and he's keeping his Marines well placed to deny any kind of harassment in his main. So taking every single little angle and covering it very, very nicely here. Really good play.
Yeah. All right, so he does have that all set. I mean, there could be some low ground harassment going on like that, the depots that are far away from the bunker possibly, but it doesn't look like Sting is really going to get any significant damage done. And yeah, he's going to be turning. What? What?
Well, he's going to use the Hellions actually to try and roast a few of those Marines up from the low ground, but he actually sacrifices a lot of his Marines there. Units lost. It's not as bad as you would initially entail and assume, but I mean, still, that was a little bit of an odd poke there.
Well, yeah, now he has to repair that medevac, which is a little bit annoying, but yeah, that was destined to fail, basically, the way that Lucifron had his spread. It's cool when they're clumped up and the Hellions really do a lot of damage, but just wasn't going to happen right there.
Yeah, so now we have the engineering bay on the way for Sting. He's looking to commit to some more bio style. He's actually going for the drop once again with these Hellions. And there was just one Marine there to actually spot that. The medevac was so low he could have ended up dying at some point. He only drops 2 Hellions there to try and go for some harassment, abandons them and just tries to do some damage. A few of those SCVs quite low. Will get maybe 1 or 2 for his troubles, but gets cleaned up regardless.
Yeah, that was like, 1 or 2 maximum there. Not really the most effective poke. But, you know, those 2 Hellions, how much are those really going to be used later in the game? Because Sting is going Marine tank, in which case the Hellions are not really that useful. We don't see people utilize them into the late game.
Yeah. I'm not too bad a fan of like saving them for later to try and go for a little bit of a run by, but you're right. It doesn't really effectively work out too much, and sometimes keeping them around can hinder you a little bit if you end up getting to that really, really like supply capped mark. So you kind of just want to get rid of them at some point anyway in the early game. And Lucifron, I mean, he's just stabilizing back home. He's just cranking out another command center, in fact. So he's happy to just transition onto the macro game while Sting just cranking out those tanks.
Yeah, with the second factory on the way, he's definitely going to get a little siege tank lead. But what is he going to do with this is the question, because as you mentioned, Claris, with that next command center popping up, Lucifron can easily take this base, and he's going to have map control because he's going to have way more Marines at the moment. You know, you can't just make a second factory of 2 bases, get 2 extra tanks, and start a tank push. That's not how it works. So I'm not sure what Sting has planned.
Yeah, he's going for another drop once again up in the top left of his opponent's base with 4 Hellions. Once again, he actually replenished 2 of them. And actually, his opponent's army is way out of position here. These SCVs could take quite a bit of damage. Marines actually poking in at the front, and a few more coming in for the reinforcement. But those Hellions are actually getting very, very well. The SCV's getting really clumped up. He will clean it up. That was kind of close, actually.
Yeah, and he killed a few. He's up to 13 SCV kills so far. So that was like 7 kills total.
Yeah.
Pretty decent. You know, he's starting to do a good job. And a lot of those are very badly hurt. So he doesn't even need to necessarily do a Hellion drop. He can do a Marine drop at this point and possibly end up killing a lot of those off.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I want to ask you one thing that I'm a little bit scared of here, depending on what happens in the middle of the map, is that okay, so Lucifron needs to control the middle of the map, I feel. Otherwise, if Sting gets the opportunity to push out, there's always that situation in TVT where on a map like this, if you've got your infrastructure near the ledge of your main, you can start sieging up little bits of it. And Lucifron does have a few buildings really, really near his ledge right now, which is kind of scary. 1 or 2.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if Sting is going to go for that. I think he's going to go for a more frontal assault. But hold on, Lucifron trying to slow him down some. And this is exactly what Lucifron should do, because Sting is focusing on army, focusing on tanks, and that's going to make him a little bit more slow because he's not going to have necessarily quite as many Marines. We see it's 50 to 37. So he's going to have to move a little bit slower, and Lucifron has to slow him down and get his tanks in position.
Yeah, it's always a scary situation in TVT when your opponent has siege tech and a higher tank count in comparison to yours. And actually, Sting has found himself a really good spot here. If he sieges up with a few tanks on that high ground, it could be very, very good for him. Actually going for a concave, and those Marines actually focus down on a few of those tanks really, really quickly, and Lucifron will take a very, very nice lead there in this engagement.
Yeah, and you know, this is why I was saying you don't just add a second factory and then push across the map on 2 bases after you get 2 additional tanks, which is exactly what he did and exactly what I said you're not supposed to do, because that's what it looks like. You die. I mean, siege tanks are amazing. They're part of the army. That's the most important, in fact, but you need to get up to the critical mass of all your units. Enough Marines to keep them alive so they can deal their damage, enough tanks that they actually deal that damage. And getting 2 extra tanks, absolutely not going to be what you need for that push.
Yeah, and also there was a little bit of an overzealous moment there for Sting. I mean, those siege tanks were so close to the ledge. So close. He was going too far forwards with that, leaving them so vulnerable with no backup from those Marines to soak up the damage from the other Marines. So he took a lot of damage very, very quickly from those 2 tanks that would have technically given him the lead, but they dissolved.
Yeah. And so I'm a bit surprised that was Sting's actual decision there. I mean, from this point, well, he's going to be able to defend this very easily, but this is what Lucifron does. He walks around a lot, keeps some control going on. And I mean, from here, I feel like Lucifron's got such a nice lead. That 3rd command center from Sting just now finishing up.
Yeah, that 3rd is already done and dusted here for Lucifron. He actually pushes in with just a few Marines, snaps a siege tank. Nice decision-making there from Lucifron. Sting swings into action, trying to defend the rest of his tanks as well, though. And he will just pull back for now, leaving a few tanks there, bringing those along with him. So, I mean, he's going up to 2-2. Both players are actually going up to 2-2 pretty rapidly. Lucifron, though, does have his armory down. He's grabbing those siege tank upgrades, as well as now Sting actually trying to catch up with that, even just throwing down a few missile turrets, because Sting has already shown tendencies to go for that drop play.
Yeah. And, you know, Lucifron also, he's ahead in every single upgrade. He's getting that 4th command center, which is kind of crucial at this point now that both players have 3 bases. He's basically leading in every single way right now, but most of his supply lead is in SCV, so he has to be careful about that. He can't just do, like, a heads-up fight.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, seeing that SCV count 76 to 52, it really does seem as if Sting is playing a little bit more for that kind of mid-game mentality, not really wanting... But he's still expanding, right? So it seems as if his actual expansion play has not really been as lucrative or anything like that as Lucifron's. He's been just flying in terms of macro. And this is the sign of a really, really good player. One that can just, you know, keep this pressure on in the middle of the map whilst getting all of these expansions back.
But that's what it is. It's pressure, whereas Sting did an actual attack.
Yeah.
You know, that's why Lucifron can really keep up on all of this. So, you know, Lucifron is playing for, like, a long game. He can kill Sting if Sting makes a mistake, but he's fine to play a longer game, whereas Sting, the longer Lucifron stays alive, the more pain Sting is going to feel.
Oh, the siege tanks actually sieging up from both players here right now. The Marines actually, I feel, are in a better position here for Sting. But meanwhile, I mean, Lucifron's trying to clean up what he can, but there's so many siege tanks here for Sting. That was a really, really nice engagement for him.
He got the quicker siege off there, and Lucifron's were a bit out of position, a little bit too far up. And suddenly, Sting coming right back into this game. You know, Lucifron was in a great spot, but definitely misstepping there, and now he's lost that extra command center. It looks like he's going to at least.
Where are all the medivacs there? They're going to get sacrificed. He's going to catch 2 of them. 3. Will he get the 4th? No, he will not, but that was needless. Lucifron right now going for a little bit of a drop down to the bottom right-hand corner. He's got a 5th expansion down to the left even. And, I mean, the thing is that shows how important confidence in your engagements is. Sting, getting that siege up just a tad second quicker, so important there, so crucial.
It is indeed, and now we see Lucifron's drop being just wiped out here. You know, Lucifron played better the entire game so far, I would say, except for that one engagement we just saw. And suddenly I look at these positions, and I don't know who's going to take this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's still neck and neck, really. I mean, Lucifron, he's gonna, if he can actually crank out these 2 bases, if he can get them up and running, he's in a really, really good spot. But right now, I feel that Sting, I mean, with the siege tank lead, he's got double his opponent's siege tanks, as well as more Marines. So if he can put on some pressure, if he can deny one of these bases pretty confidently and kill it off, as well as maybe even get some of this infrastructure in the middle of the map, he's gonna be all right.
All right, so this is kind of funny. Two armies passing in the night, it seems, and we could turn into some sort of crazy base trade scenario, which is definitely not how I saw this game going, but it looks like that may be it. Sting actually being a little bit indecisive, sending some of his siege tanks back and some of his units forward. And, you know, this is the little army sent forward. I feel like that might possibly be something Lucifron can stop, but this is a lot of damage that Lucifron's putting on for him. Yeah,
Lucifron in that devil may care attitude right now. Sting trying to push forwards here at the natural, but Lucifron, I mean, both players have lost pretty much equal SCVs. And for Lucifron, though, whoa, wait a minute, 74 workers to 24 right now. If Sting is not able to do massive damage from here on out, Lucifron is in a situation where he can just, I mean, he's on top of his opponent's entire infrastructure right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of in shock that Sting sent back his tanks and just stemmed Marines forward. I mean, he's still doing damage and whatnot. I guess he will clean this up, but you know, I feel like the base trade would have been much more successful for Sting. He could have killed Lucifron off.
Yeah, the big thing is here, I mean, both players are still producing tanks, right? That's great, but Lucifron is still producing Marines, and having that base, having that to buffer your tanks, having that to just spread out, he's producing 9 Marines at a time. That's going to be a massive, massive factor here.
Certainly is, and I mean, just looking at the mini-map, it looks like Lucifron's put together a little bit better than Sting right now. And then you look at the supply, and that backs up 148 to 86. I mean, there is no economy here left for Sting, even if he has 4 command centers left, which is the same amount that Lucifron has left, by the way. Those mules aren't going to be enough to keep him up with Lucifron's production.
Yes, I mean, just looking at the income tab, Lucifron way ahead right now. Sting is actually catching up a little bit, but both players just cranking out those upgrades, trying to get it going, but still, Lucifron almost doubling his opponent's supply right now, going to stim in, try and push forwards here, killing off the remainder of a few of these tanks and maybe even the medevacs. But actually, he just wants to look to kill off this entire base's worth of economy with those Marines, which, I mean, if you're shutting down your opponent's economy and you're quite easily just producing back at home, it's a pretty good situation.
Yeah, and in fact, he's going to take down one of these orbitals, which is just crucial because Sting doesn't have enough SCVs nor enough mules, so that's a big move right there. And in fact, oh god,
he's going to drop it on the tanks.
Yeah, okay. Good thing for Sting, he had some run out, and almost got that
one with the full
medevac.
Yeah, that would have been a little bit scary, but even still, he's trying to hold on to as best he can to his 4th base there. And Lucifron, meanwhile, he's just established himself a really, really good spot. I'm surprised he actually got a planetary fortress. That doesn't really work out too well against tanks most of the time.
Yeah, it normally doesn't. That's kind of old school style. We've seen people really err away from there, especially on small maps like this.
Yeah. Too true.
But oh well, I mean, that's okay. It died instead of getting lifted off, so I guess our thoughts are actually correct there. But you know, at this point, I'm looking at this. How does Sting possibly win this game? Okay, he does have healthy siege tank count at 14 against 13. His Marines, though, 20 down. His medevacs 7 down. His SCVs, like 1/4 as many. This is He's got almost nothing left here.
Lucifron has to make the mistake, right? He has to go for the worst engagement of all time.
Well, Lucifron did it once already this game.
He did, yeah.
When he was really far ahead, but he's caught right back up, and I don't think he'll make that mistake again.
No. He's going to play super cautious. He's just going to sit here with his tanks. He knows he's starving out his opponent right now, pretty much. He knows that, I mean, back home, he has more of an economy than his opponent, so why not just go for the starving style? Although a nice move there by Sting, actually clearing up the rest of those tanks.
Yeah, that's good of him to clear that up, but Lucifron right now is mining pretty fully from 2 different bases, whereas Sting has a few mules drop down over here. I mean, look at that. That's not enough. He's catching up a little bit in supply, which means that his army is actually pretty scary here. In fact, if we take a look at the army, it's pretty even. Lucifron has way more medevacs, but there's more tanks for Sting by 2, and there's about the same amount of Marines.
Yeah, he has 3-3 with 0-2, along with 3-2 with 0-2. So we have Sting just slightly behind in terms of those armor upgrades for his bio. It can be very, very a big deal, though, in Marine versus Marine engagements. Not necessarily Marine versus tanks, but Lucifron here is just trying to find a location to push in. And you've got to remember that Lucifron has so much longevity with those medevacs.
And look at this, a stim in to try to pick off that command center, but it was lifted off. And at this point, all Lucifron needs to do is not waste his army. If he gets his army completely owned, then Sting can walk over him for the win, but that's really the only way.
And one thing that's nice for Lucifron now is now that he's maxed out, he's accruing a bank, right? So every single time he goes for an engagement, now if he actually trades, if he has the infrastructure to back it up, he can replenish quite considerably, and actually maybe even just go for a second wave of an attack. And I mean, Sting's playing this out nicely, to be fair. For the position he's in, playing very nicely.
I have to agree with you on that, Claris.
Yeah.
I mean, with such a hurt economy and everything, he is doing what he should. And in fact, he's sieged up here. Lucifron deciding he might be able to break it. Can he break it, though? A lot of damage being done at the same time. Sting losing his Marines up top, trying to engage against the tanks of Lucifron. And this could be the deciding battle that ends this game.
Yeah, 6 siege tanks up to the north aren't really going to do too much. I mean, with all the Marines actually coming out eventually to deal with that. Meanwhile, Lucifron putting a little bit of pressure on the front of his opponent's base. He's going to go for the Marine drop again, trying to find some way back into this somehow. Sting almost 100 supply down at this point. And I mean, he's still making some good decisions to try and bring himself back in, but maybe splitting up the army there wasn't necessarily the best one.
Yeah. Well, you know, you had to try something, you know, I guess that's as good as other things, because we were having a hard time as observers seeing the entire map, finding a way for him to win. And at this point, with 43 supply to 151, we should be seeing GG from Sting pretty quickly here, just as soon as he realizes, you know, exactly how far behind he is. I think he's kind of looking around right now, saying, okay, what do I have left? How many SCVs? What does this look like? And then we should be seeing a GG.
Yeah, now Sting still looking kind of down and out right now. He's just going to try and pick up maybe a little bit and go into the main, something like that. Anything to try and find some way. You're right, though. I mean, actually, he's just going to push in here and kill off the remainder of these tanks. Absolutely brutal. As for now, the Marines just tear them apart. And, I mean, what can Sting do from here?
Nothing. He's dead. This is like... Dead. This has turned into a Marine King Prime game where he's lost. You know,
like, just flies around every building to every corner. He's like, I can't give up. Maybe if I land, I can make a few Marines in his mineral line.
It's exactly. I mean, this is what some scrappy Terrans kind of do. Like really aggressive Terrans are oftentimes very scrappy because they get into weird situations. And they just don't leave games.
And there you go.
I mean, that's fine. But GG. Lucifron taking game number 1, and you know what? That was actually a pretty good TVT overall. Sting made that big mistake with the second factory, thinking he could push there. It was just never, ever, 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 ever going to work. It was just, that's not what the second factory is actually for, you know? If you go 5 racks and 2 facts off 2 command centers, there's no point. I mean, you can go 3 racks and 2 facts, get your tank production up while you take your 3rd really quickly, but the whole kit and caboodle doesn't make a lot of sense. You're not going to get up to what the critical mass you need to actually move across the map.